Your new client is sitting in your office. You have asked your client what the presenting difficulty is, and your client has explained that to you. You may have asked for a recent experience that the client has had of this difficulty, and you may even have tried a floatback. By doing so, you could well have identified a number of past events, even back to the touchstone memory. You've got a bit of structure there. You have targets for processing. But they may not be all the targets that you need to work on with your client. In this video, I will explain how to take a history, but the things that you need to ask about in the history which could give you additional targets for processing. Please join me. I'm Dr. Michael Paterson, clinical psychologist and EMDR Europe accredited senior trainer. I want to help you improve your practice of EMDR therapy. When I have a new client in, I would be doing the floatback often with the client to get some structure. Think of that as some skeleton to work on, but taking a detailed history allows me to put more meat on the bones. Where do you start? Well, I start at the very beginning. In fact, the very beginning of the client's life. I ask the client, as far as you're aware, was your mother's pregnancy with you a normal one? Now, you may think that's an unusual question to ask the client, but in actual fact, being the fetus in the womb means that the client may well have been exposed to trauma pre-birth. So, for example, a client might say, well, my mother had a threatened miscarriage. Oh, what happened? She fell down the stairs. Well, when I say she fell down the stairs, she was pushed by my father. So that's given me some indication straight away that the relationship between the mother and the client's father was not a particularly good one, even before the client was born. I would ask about the client's birth, any difficulties at birth. So if it happened to be a cesarean section or an emergency birth with the umbilical cord around the client's neck, then I could find that out by asking that question. If I don't ask the question, often the information won't be volunteered. Were developmental milestones achieved normally? Sometimes the client might say, what do you mean? Walking and talking, maths and English the same as other children? Oh yeah, pretty much. Or some clients, by asking that question, will tell me, no, I had remedial classes for maths and English. If you think about that from the child's perspective, sitting in the classroom, the tap comes on the door, and then the child goes out, walks out of the room to the remedial classes, leaving the classmates behind. So what does that say about that child that is leaving the room for special classes? There's something different about them. But is it different in a good way? No. So that can have a significant impact on that young child leaving the room, leaving the classmates behind, their peers. I would also ask about where the client grew up. Coming from Northern Ireland, if clients are of a certain age, there was the Northern Ireland conflict which was ongoing, and even currently there are certain areas which are controlled by paramilitary groups, loyalist paramilitaries or Republican paramilitaries. And all of these exert some influence on the community. And as we know, community violence is a risk factor. It's one of those adverse childhood experiences that may occur. Once I have established that, I will ask the client about experiences about growing up in the family. And if I were to ask the simple question, and what was it like growing up in the family? Great, or it was fine, or as they might say in Ireland, it was grand. Nothing grandiose, of course, just means it was good. But it's not qualitative. There is a particular question I will ask of the client. I will say, if you were upset about anything as a child, would Mom have been there with a hug for you? Oh yes, she was very huggy. So I now know the client got emotional support as required. But the client's answer might be one of, no, she wasn't a huggy person. Okay, and what was the relationship with your dad like? Would he have given you a hug if you needed one? Oh yes, he was very good. So I now know the client had somebody that would meet their emotional needs if they were upset. Now, it may have been a grandparent or an aunt that was living with them, or maybe an older sibling. But that way it gives me a good idea of what sort of attachment relationship the client had growing up. I would also ask about where the client comes in the birth order in the family, because that may have a significant role to play in terms of the experiences that they had. It could be that the client was the firstborn of maybe 6, 7 children and was given the responsibilities of looking after them, of those younger siblings, that is. Given responsibility way before their time. And if you think about it, maybe a 6 or 7-year-old child being responsible for caring for younger children, it's setting that child up the field. It's an adult's job, not a child's. So the impact on the child at that time could have been phenomenal. I will also explore about the temperature of the environment growing up. There may well have been domestic violence. There could have been rows between the parents if the client didn't actually witness any violence taking place. Now, these arguments or rows that the client has witnessed may have been seen firsthand, or the client may well have heard these going on downstairs, lying in bed at night, hearing the parents arguing. One client I saw reminds me of the profound effect that this might have on a child. He described standing outside his parents' bedroom at 11 o'clock at night. He was 9 years old. He should have been sleeping so that he would be up and fresh for school the next day, but listening outside his parents' bedroom door to ensure that they were asleep before he felt safe enough to get to sleep. So that had a knock-on effect on his ability to concentrate in school. So it impacted on his academic performance, but also the way teachers would have seen him. Now, all this has been gained before we've even found out how the client got on with others at school. So I would ask about starting primary school. How did you settle in? So that question will often elicit information about the client's separation anxiety at the start. I would ask about how did you get on with other children? Any problems with teachers? Academically, how did you do? I would also ask about second level education. What was it like for settling in? Were you able to get on with other children? Any friends? I would also ask about any bullying. Inquire too about the client's academic performance at age 16 or age 18, and also follow their work history if there has been one. And look too at relationships that the client has had, friendships, but also intimate relationships, same sex or opposite sex, and check out their sexuality and have there been any struggles to do with that. Because certain experiences that the client may well have had could be stored, locked in the memory network, and feed into a negative sense of self. I would also inquire if there were any other traumatic experiences in the client's life. And ask the question, as far as you're aware, have you any recall of any physical, sexual or emotional abuse other than anything you've told me about? Because if I don't ask that question, the shameful experiences that a client may have had, maybe with sexual abuse, would not necessarily be volunteered. I'm also going to ask about the client's medical history, exploring with them any significant medical conditions through life. Well, I had asthma as a child. I wasn't able to participate in sports. Well, if you think about a child, maybe 14 years old, and there's the other kids able to participate in sports, and this one breathless and not able to do so, or maybe willing to do so, but not able to perform as the others might. They could be the last one picked for the team. What message does that give the child? So certainly explore things like that. Also consider hospitalizations for the client themselves, but also any other significant family members. For example, a younger sibling or an older sibling who spent a lot of time in hospital. And that ill sibling then got a lot of attention from the parents. As a result of that, our client has missed out. What message does that give the child growing up? This sibling is more important than you are. It feeds into a negative self-belief. I explore too if there has been any mental health issues in the family, also the client's mental health history. I would explore how the client copes, considering alcohol consumption and cigarettes, and also illicit drug use, or even medication, which is prescribed medication, but if they have got it on the black market. I would certainly consider how the client is coping in the here and now, but also I would be looking to see what resources the client has. Internal resources, so the client may be a resilient individual, and we may have found out from the client's history that the client has been faced with multiple challenges and is goal-focused and able to overcome them. We may find too that the client has methods of self-soothing, healthy methods such as yoga, exercise on a regular basis, using relaxation techniques. We may also find the client has got good social support. The literature going back to the 1980s indicates that the availability of social support is the key thing, a great buffer against life stress. By taking that history, in addition to the floatback which you may have done, then we put more meat on the bones. We can work out our target plan for the client. I would try and cluster experiences as best I can, and let's say, for example, criticisms from a parent growing up. Well, rather than target every single experience, we can cluster those criticisms from that particular parent. Being bullied at school. It happened on multiple occasions, but we can cluster that for targeting. I do hope that this video has been helpful to you. And I would invite you to subscribe free down below to the channel. That way YouTube can let you know about other videos that I add to the series. If you found the video of value, perhaps you would click like down below as well. I want to see you become the best that you can possibly be in delivering EMDR therapy.